Welcome, all you lovely listeners, to the Far Post Podcast, presented by ESports Gaming League. You know, we may seem dumb here on the Far Post Podcast, largely because for about 10 years we've done everything to show people that we're dumb. But I think we did something smart. I'm not sure we did it on purpose, but we didn't have time. There were some scheduling conflicts last week. We were not able to get a podcast in last week. So instead of having a show where we talked about a 3-2 loss to DC United, we instead waited a week. Now we get to talk about a 2-0 win over Inter Miami. So you may think we're dumb. We're actually just lazy.
You could be setting us up for failure here, though, because we do a show this week and then lose at the weekend. Now it becomes we shouldn't have done a show because...
But next week there's a U.S. Open Cup game midweek, so we're not going to be doing a show next week anyway.
Okay.
So maybe we've already set ourselves up unintentionally.
Right.
But
okay. U.S. Open Cup next week, so mark your calendars for a biblical storm on Wednesday.
Oh, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Freak storm. Freak weather incident.
At this point, I would be disappointed if there wasn't a freak storm.
I mean, with 2 years of no Open Cup,
it's going to be epic.
Yeah, it's payback time.
Be like that tornado last week, just picking houses up and throwing them around the place.
That was a big yikes.
That was unbelievable.
There was.
Well, I'm a big yikes. I'm Jeff.
You are.
I'm the host of the show.
The biggest of the yikes.
The biggest yikes.
I'm not down with this clapping thing. I don't know when this flipped, but I'm not happy about it.
Not my call. I can't control how the people feel.
I know.
You know?
Yeah, we'll rile them up. We'll get them.
Maybe it's just setting you up for like a big heel turn.
Oh,
so you can be like Hogan. You can be like Hollywood Jeff Lemieux. At some point, just start yelling at kids.
I'd be a good heel.
F-bombing kids at the games, flipping people off. Yeah, I like that. I like where we're going. Okay, now I'm on board.
Yeah. All right, it's playing a long game here.
Hollywood Jeff Lemieux.
I'm here with Carl Conley.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm tremendous. Thank you. Thanks for asking.
With the lettuce shortened a little bit.
Yeah.
So looking a little cleaner.
You have to prune a tree in order for it to grow back stronger.
That's fair. That's what I'm doing. I've been pruning for the last 8 years.
Yes.
Waiting.
Just ready for a growth explosion.
They always tell you if you shave your face, then the beard grows back thicker.
Right.
So that's what I've been doing for 8 years. I've been shaving my head, waiting for the opportune moment to just grow it out.
There'll just be hair exploding all over you.
Yeah. And it's going to be a mullet.
Right.
And it's going to be beautiful.
And it's going to be magnificent.
Yeah. We've got Jason Dalrymple here as well on the ones and the twos.
How's it going?
Pretty good. Yeah, pretty good because the New England Revolution won last weekend, which puts me in a good mood. And, it
helps, doesn't it? It does help.
It does help. It certainly does help. I'll say we're still early in the season, but we're also not at the point where you can say we're really early in the season. You're more than 25% of the way through the
sample
season.
Size, yeah.
You got a decent chunk of the season underway, but there's still only in May. There's only so important a game can be. We've talked about this several times on the show, but man, did it feel like the Revs not only needed those 3 points that they picked up last weekend against Inter Miami, but they needed that kind of performance against Inter Miami. It was a 2-0 win that was probably even more comfortable than the final scoreline would indicate. And we've spoken about the performance at home against Pumas, that 3-0 win, which, Cahal, you've referred to as perhaps one of the best 90-minute Revolution performances in the club's I don't even remember now, 27-year history. Jeez, 27-year history. Taking that game out of the mix, looking just at the 9 league performances, do you feel like this win over Inter Miami was the most complete performance the Revs have put together this season?
I do. I think in terms of being ready to go, and obviously that displayed itself immediately on how the team being up for the game, but from the get-go, they were on top of the game. The amount of chances they created, on another night, Sebastian Lletget might have a hat-trick, right? They were dominant from the get-go. They were up for it. That's the team I expect to see more often than not as we move forward.
Yeah, just never troubled defensively. You never really felt like Miami was going to get back into that game.
No, and we'll talk about Matt Turner returning and what that meant, but he really was a passenger for most of the night. There wasn't that moment where you go, oh man, how did he save that? It just never happened. We were just relatively comfortable. It was the only fear was it's that old one of those nights cliches where you have all these chances, you don't take them, and then something freak happens. And we've seen us give up silly goals all over the place. And was it setting us up for that again? You get the second goal, which helps, and then obviously the flurry of red cards on top of that. And but no, it was comfortable. We're in control. That's the sort of performance that I think we assumed we would see more often than not from this team, and I certainly expect to going forward.
Yeah, generated a ton of chances. I guess if you're looking for one criticism, probably did take a little longer to find that second goal than they would have preferred, but ultimately did get that second goal, and that really has been the issue for the Revs this year. That was the fourth straight game that they've taken a 1-0 lead inside 11 minutes, but it was only the second time in that stretch that they ended up finding the second goal to take a 2-0 lead. No coincidence. Those are the two games that the Revs were able to win during that stretch.
Yep.
So it hasn't been an issue of being up for it from the start and getting off to a good start. They've done that consistently. It's been how they've responded to that. And they did that well against Inter Miami. And when they do that, it results in 3 points. Also, no coincidence, probably, that the most complete performance we've seen thus far from this team in the regular season comes as the Revs are getting healthy.
Sure.
You mentioned Matt Turner getting back on the field, most notable amongst the returning players last weekend. Made his 2022 debut after dealing with that foot injury that he suffered in preseason. And as you mentioned, didn't have a ton to do, right? But I think just the emotional boost that group got from knowing Matt Turner was there behind them, it's tough to quantify what that means to the team.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to imagine what it means to that back four that have that stadium presence behind them again. And, that's no knock on any of the keepers but you get that consistency with those four guys that got very familiar playing with each other, and you get that voice behind them, and they know what he's capable of. They know what if they're in the wrong spot, he's going to tell them, and it's just comfort. It's a comfort level to be able to go and get on the front foot and go play the game and not be sort of second guessing what might be going on, not just behind you, but everywhere. It's just that comfort level that he brings.
Matt Turner's Twitter handle is @HeadTurner.
If you don't follow him, get on it.
You
He
should.
He doesn't have enough followers.
Just in case anybody didn't know.
But yeah, we talk so much. We have a tendency to kind of fall back on Matt Turner's shot-stopping ability, right? Because it's next level.
Spectacular.
It is elite.
Yeah.
I don't think at this point it is hyperbole to say amongst the best shot stoppers probably in the world, based on the context of the fact that he's going off to the Premier League shortly.
Yes.
But we probably, because he's been so elite at shot stopping, games like this where he doesn't have as much to do, we have a tendency to maybe not talk about the organizational skills. And you mentioned his voice back there. I mean, he is constant. It never stops with Matt Turner organizing the group in front of him. And when he doesn't have as much to do throughout the course of the 90 minutes, you have to give him at least some of that credit for keeping that group in front of him organized and engaged.
For sure, yeah. There's never a moment of drop off, and no one's allowed to switch off. Like you said, it's constant. He's constantly barking and directing and cajoling. Right. That's a huge part of what it is to be a top class goalkeeper. And that's when you look at how steep his career arc has been and how rapid it's been, relatively speaking. Right. Shot stopper and that sort of innate natural ability to be a great shot stopper, but how quickly he's picked up the nuance of the game and where his back four should be at all times is equally as impressive. It's just to be able. I'm privileged, right, to be able to stand that sort of behind that goal and watch and listen to him, and it's to watch how it's just constant throughout the game. To your point, no matter how busy he is, it's just amazing to watch him go to work.
He gave such a genuine answer post-game, too, about what Saturday night meant to him and what the interactions with the supporters meant to him. He mentioned that moment pre-game when Sarge announces starting in goal, number 30, Matt Turner, and the reception that he got. He said that he kind of had to compose himself a little bit after that moment because he kind of got choked up. That moment he has when he's running down in the first half to defend the goal in front of the fort for the first time this season, and you have that little bit of interaction. And he talked about what this club means to him and what this team means to him and how difficult it was for him to feel like he was a little disconnected from that over the course of the past few months. And I did want to address, because I saw a couple people say, well, if he loves the club that much and this club means that much to him, he wouldn't be leaving. And I could not disagree more. I mean, to think that Matt Turner can't love and appreciate everything about the New England Revolution and the players in that locker room and this organization and everything that has gone on over the past few years to get him to this point in his career, and not simultaneously feel like it is the right move for him to go challenge himself with Arsenal in the Premier League. And, also pick up a pretty hefty payday going over to play in the Premier League. To act like those two things cannot coexist, I think is absurd. You can absolutely love the New England Revolution and everything that's happened the past few years and still know that, yeah, moving on to Arsenal's the right move. Those two things don't have to exist independently.
No, not at all. Look, and it's the goal of every soccer player, no matter where you grow up or in what country or what is to play at the highest level. That's the goal. And he's no different, nor should he be. And what's happened, he wouldn't be getting this move to Arsenal if the Revolution hadn't taken a chance on an undrafted goalkeeper and invested in trying to develop him, right? So yes, that will always be a special part of who he is, and it'll always be part of his makeup. And he can love this club, but want to go and test himself at the highest level. And frankly, as Revolution fans, we should be looking forward to the day where he lines up for Arsenal to be able to say that's our guy. That's he's ours, right? It's a part of who we are as a 27-year-old league, that you're competing with leagues with 100 and 150 years of history and establishment. And our players, yes, it stings when you lose your better players, right? But you should also be able to detach yourself and look at it and go, well, yeah, we want to be able to put our players on a path to being the best in the world. And we've done it with Clint Dempsey was the sort of the first, piece of that, and there was the whole 12-man Charlery, will they, won't they, and all that nonsense, right? But now we're in a real, if you look at what MLS is doing on the global stage and where people view our league now and the talent that's coming out of our league, it's going to happen more and more going forward. Dynamic young players that do well here are going to be taken by the biggest leagues in the world, and we should be able to sort of take a step back and go, that's awesome. There's one more of our guys going to prove themselves at the top.
Yeah, and I know we thought we were going to have 6 months to kind of see Matt Turner off. That, obviously, we got robbed a little bit by the injury that he suffered in preseason. We're only going to get him for the next couple of months or so, but really should be cherishing every moment that we have on the field with Matt Turner over the course of these next couple months, because it is going to be a special moment. It's going to be a sad moment, obviously. That's part of it, but it's going to be a special moment kind of seeing him off. But he's still got a little bit of work to do here in Major League Soccer and helping the Revs over the course of the next couple months. And Matt Turner's return was really important. Henry Kessler's return, critical on that back line. Been a difficult start to the season for Henry Kessler. Dealt with hamstring injury in preseason, continued to kind of have setbacks with it. I think 3 or 4 different times. It felt like he was getting back and then had a little bit of a setback and ended up missing some more time. He finally gets back on the field, and then he comes down with an illness. He misses a game and a half because of illness. So it's been a really difficult start to the year for Henry. But he's the type of player, we talk about midfielders and guys like Carles Gil who make everybody around them better. Henry feels like a center back who makes the rest of the back line better.
Oh, no question. And I don't even think Andrew Farrell would argue with saying Henry Kessler is the best center back on the team. Natural, pure center. You see people and you're just like, well, that guy's a center back, right? That's what he is. He's routinely in the right spot. He does the right thing with the ball. He's very, very organized. He's very physical. He brings an edge to us that we frankly miss when he's not there. He's a little nasty in the best possible way, right? And we talk about the throwing the ball away and all those antics, right? But you need a little bit of that in your team, and he's invariably, when something happens, even if it's not his fault, with the goal and the scuffle on the ball or trying to get the ball back thing a couple of games ago, right? It wasn't his fault. No. He's in the middle of it though. That's who he is. He's definitely a leader, and he brings a little nasty edge to us. But yeah, if you're Andrew or Dewan or Brandon, it's a different game when he's in the heart of the defense for sure. That's you start to people talk about the spine of the team, right? You start to talk about build that spine up, right? And when you have Matt back and you have Henry back, and that's a really solid platform to build on. I did think it was interesting, and Bruce said Bruce would never listen to the show, but if he does, he should turn it off because we're going to talk formation. At least I am, right? Like we reverted to a very familiar formation, right? And I think that all, breeds comfort and breeds familiarity for this team, and they all start to understand their role a little better. For whatever reason, you're going to change from time to time, and you're going to try stuff, and I get all that, but it did feel like there was a sense of this is what we do, and this is who's supposed to be in these spots, and let's go.
Well, not exactly like that.
That I think would be Bruce's exact answer if he was actually here. Yeah. First of all, definitely a Brad Marchand element with Henry Kessler in the sense of a guy who you absolutely hate to play against, but if you had the opportunity to have him on your team, you're taking him all day, every day.
Love it.
And then you mentioned the formational shift, and it's helpful to get all your bodies back healthy and have a fully healthy back line. But Bruce Arena talked about it a little bit post game. Said the last time the Revs had played Miami, they get absolutely torn apart on the counter, and that wasn't the only game where that transitional defense looked like it's had some holes in it. So it was a pretty simple shift to just say, yeah, we're going to move to more of a 4-2-3-1. We're going to drop Tommy McNamara a little bit deeper alongside Matt Polster, give that back line a little bit more cover. And it seems like a simple little move like that helped the Revs just kind of shore things up in an area where they really needed to shore things up.
Yeah, for sure. And that's probably part of it too, right? It's easier to pick your best formation when you have your best players, right, too. So there's certainly a level of that involved, and you have everybody healthy. You know exactly what you're going to get out of Tommy and Matt Polster in those roles. You know the job they're going to do. You know the work they're going to do. And it allows Carlos and, if it was Tico and Leggett, it allows them a little bit of freedom to go and attack the game at the front end of the field, right? Know that you're protected behind. The fullbacks have more protection to bomb on when you have those two guys doing their job, right? So it's that Miami, we talked about it on the show after that Miami game. We were all over the place when we lost the ball, right? And it's happened a few times this year. So that just, it did feel, it just felt like as that game was getting ready to kick off that everyone was in the right mindset and just felt right. And you have all these pieces back and it feels a little more like what we saw all of last year. And that's who we are and that's who we're going to be.
Yeah, it feels like there's a knock-on effect too, especially for a guy like Sebastian Leggett, who's a player that Bruce Arena has said several times he wants to be primarily an attacking threat. He doesn't want Sebastian Leggett looking to play backwards, looking to play sideways, looking to play safe. He wants him pushing forward and to think forward first. And in that type of position, when you're playing on one of the wings, I guess, quote unquote, in that 4-2-3-1, that's primarily an attack-minded position. Yeah. So you're putting Sebastian Leggett in the best position for him, probably. And Adam Buksa is a guy who seems to thrive in that sort of setup. And before we get to the man of the hour, obviously we're going to end up talking about the guy who stole the headlines on Saturday night. But I wanted to mention
which is interesting because we've been talking about all getting back to something that's familiar, and then we're going to talk about something that's completely bang new. Wow. Yeah.
But first, before we do that, I felt like Adam Buksa deserved special mention on Saturday night. He's got goals in 3 straight now. Getting back into that goal-scoring form, all 3 headers, really classic Adam Buksa goals. Drew both red cards, both second yellows on Saturday night. And it really does feel like league-wide right now, I think if anybody was putting together a list of the best forwards in Major League Soccer, Adam Buksa is going to be one of the first names down on that list at this point.
Yeah, no question. And it's not just that he's it's not like Peter Crouch, he's, sticking the box and getting his head on it. He's much more than that. The work he does without the ball, the work he does to hold the ball up, battling and fighting to win possession and give us a platform to move up the field, all those things, you add it all together, he's a force. He's an absolute force.
Yeah, it would be really easy to kind of pigeonhole Adam Buksa as your classic target forward because he's 6'3", because he's so dominant in the air.
Yep.
But he really is a complete player. You can play to Adam Buksa's feet. He is going to be just as quality with the ball at his feet as he is if you're lobbing it up to him in the air.
Yeah, and you talk about like him drawing the red cards, right? Like he puts his body in a position, he takes abuse, he takes punishment, he takes big hits, and but he stays on the ball, and he holds the ball, and he gives us a chance to get it to Carlos, to get it to Sebastian. Let's get on the front foot and let's move up the field. Link play, all those things, right? You're right. It's too simplistic to say, well, yeah, he's 6'3", throw it in the box, he's going to win a header. That's not who he is. He's much, much more than that. And that's why, look, it's not when transfer windows open and rumors start and you hear random clubs all over who's been linked with a player like him. That's why. It's because he's not just that guy. We've seen a lot of big center forwards in MLS. We've seen a lot of physical presences play up front in MLS. He's much more than that. He's much, much more refined a player than that. And he's crucial to what we're trying to do.
Oh, absolutely. And last but not least, Saturday night's hero, Tico, Damian Rivera.
Mm-hmm.
First start, first minute, first goal, 3rd player in MLS history to score in the first minute of his first start, first since 2007. Matias Mantilla for Real Salt Lake. And what a classy finish. The first 2 touches that he takes to get that ball out of his feet, takes the pass from Carlos Heel, and they're really subtle, but it's 2 great touches to get himself into a shooting position, really close control, and then absolutely lashes that home at the near post. And it's not the type of finish you would necessarily expect to see from a 19-year-old kid making his first MLS start. It's a really confident finish.
Oh, yeah, there was no doubt in his mind what he was going to do when he got the ball. He's going to goal and he's going to rip a shot, and that's I think the players that have been around him, or we've heard about him around the club internally for a couple of years, and that he's the Revs 2 journey is really helpful to him, and he's brimming with confidence. And when he gets in, there's no thought to, I need to pull this back out, or I need to look for Dewan to support, or it's just, no, this is what I do. I'm going to get it at my feet and I'm going to rip one. I mean, it's a brilliant finish. Like if any more established player, if we're just talking about Adam Buksa, if he does that, it's up for goal of the week, right? Is so much confidence and so much belief in his own ability in the first minute of the game. It was fantastic.
Yeah, and as Bruce Arena spoke about post-game, he talked about bringing a guy like Tico along at the right pace. We've been hearing about Tico for a while, and I think there was an anticipation with him because he signed at the end of 2019. His first preseason was 2020. In his first preseason start against the Colorado Rapids, he scored 2 goals in the first half. And it was like, all right, let's get this kid in the mix right now. And it just hasn't been the right time. He needed those opportunities at Revolution 2. He needed to build that confidence. And Bruce Arena talked post-game about making sure you don't put a player like that in a position where their confidence can be damaged. And it's not necessarily, well, we don't think that he can help us in this moment. It's that we don't want to hurt him in this moment. We need to make sure that we're not damaging the psyche of a young player and doing irreparable damage at that age. We just need to make sure that he's fully ready to go when we put him in that spot.
Yeah, and that's the the benefit of the current system, right? And the current development system in MLS, right? That you have, it's not like back in the day if a young player wasn't quite ready with the first team, they were just training, right? Or just running around or trying to do something. Now it was sort of the lone player out thing.
Going out to Rochester for the year and feeling totally disconnected.
Right.
Yeah.
Now you have the ability to keep them in a competitive professional setting, still attached to the club and still keeping a watch on them. I mean, we talked about it with Renix a couple of weeks ago, right? And there's the physical development of playing professional soccer, right? That while you're waiting for your chance in the first team, and that's a lot to do with why he's so confident and ready to go, because he's been playing. Yeah, the stage is bigger and there's more people there and it's Carlos Heel passing the ball and that's all big stuff. But for him, it's just, no, that's what I've been doing for the last 18 months. I'm just going to get the ball and control it and bang in the net because that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, I spoke with both Matt Turner and Andrew Farrell about Tico after the game, and both of them said, like, this guy carves people up in training, and he has been doing it for years. And it's always that interesting point in development with a young player like that who shows you those flashes of what they are capable of. And you say, okay, well, here's the peak. Here's what this guy's capable of. Then, especially for an 18, 19, 20-year-old player, that really critical step becomes how consistently can you do that? And that's what Turner said about Tico is, we know what this kid can do. We've seen what he can do day in and day out in training, but it's a matter of doing it day in, day out in training and doing it week to week to week at the professional level. So that's kind of that next step for Tico. But again, it's you kind of got to remember, he's still a relatively young player, 19 years old, getting to that age where you kind of want to start seeing players make that jump. But he's kind of at that point right now where huge developmental opportunity for him. So we're going to talk a lot more about Tico. We'll be back very shortly with this week's guest, Revolution Technical Director Curt Onalfo. We're going to talk more about Damian Rivera, Revolution 2, the pro player pathway here in New England. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Far Post Podcast, presented by ESports Gaming League. We are thrilled to be joined now on the show by the Revs Technical Director, Curt Onalfo. Curt, thanks so much for taking the time to join us.
My pleasure to be on.
I think we have to start by talking about the man of the hour, the guy who stole some of the headlines on Saturday night, Tico. Damian Rivera kind of burst onto the scene with that first MLS start, first MLS goal in the first minute, only the third player in MLS history to do that. And Bruce spoke post-game about Tico's development because this is a guy who's been part of the first-team roster for 3 seasons now, but we're just starting to see him get kind of that first real opportunity with the first team. And Bruce said, even though he's been a first-team player, you got to bring these younger players along at the right pace. You got to put them in situations where they can succeed. You don't want to put them out there when it could be an opportunity to potentially damage his confidence. So with Tico in particular, how important has it been, and how important will it continue to be to bring a player like that along at the right pace and put him in situations he can succeed?
Yeah, what Bruce is saying is accurate, all right? But and also it's up to the player and when they're ready. So every player is different. Some players can just be signed to a homegrown contract, and all of a sudden the opportunity's there and they take it and run with it. Tico was on the verge when we were in the bubble, where he was playing very, very well, and he was very close to getting an opportunity down there, but then he picked up an injury, got sick, that type of thing, so all of a sudden that opportunity went away. But the beauty is we have a second team and we have a pro pathway system. So Tico was able to get 2 full years of playing in that system. So 2 full years playing as a pro. So in the past, you would be a first team player, you would just be training, but you wouldn't be getting those games. And I think what happened in Tico's scenario is it just lined up where he was playing very, very well for the second team, having an impact, being dangerous, being the most dangerous attacking player on the field for both teams when you watch the game. As just an observer, you would see that. And then he had an opportunity where he was able to start for the first team when he was in form, and he made the most of it. So good for him. So that's just one step. You know, Tico's going to have to continually show the coaching staff that he belongs on the field, and that's the difficult part, and competition makes us all better. So, kudos for Bruce for sensing that, and it was the right opportunity, giving him the opportunity, and then kudos for Tico for taking the most of the opportunity. And for us, it was a good day for our Pro Pathway program.
It feels like what we've heard about Tico from most of his teammates over the past couple of years is that in the attacking third of the field, this is a kid who was there a couple of years ago. There were moments in training where he was kind of tearing guys up when he was even 17 years old. It was just kind of rounding out the rest of his game.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be a two-way player, and that's what, that's a big part of playing in MLS is being responsible and being reliable defensively. So, this is again where we have to look at the entire Pro Pathway system and all the coaches and Clint PA and Marcelo Santos with the second team, knowing that that's the case. And it's been, there was times where, early days for him when he wasn't doing for the second team as well. So all of a sudden now, strength in numbers, you give him those opportunities, you tell him what he needs to be working, and then he starts becoming reliable there, and all of a sudden now he starts showing in training for the first team, and now he's ready to make that jump.
Is he kind of the perfect example of what the two team can do for a player? Because over the course of the past couple of years, it was not only was he getting the opportunity to play competitive professional minutes, but in a lot of situations with Revolution 2, he was one of the guys. He was looked to be an impact player in those situations. So for a younger player, how important is it to maybe be in those situations where you're not just getting minutes, but you're getting important minutes?
Yeah, and you have to make an impact. Yeah. What you realize, Tico was always very talented. So he basically just, as a youth soccer player, he didn't have to work on his fitness. He just was better than everybody. So then all of a sudden now he becomes a pro. He needs to learn about the fitness component, and I think that was a big part of his development is understanding that, all of a sudden when you start pushing yourself, you realize you have a different level. You can arrive at a different place, and so he started doing that. So that's part of that is maturity, and you can just see his body is changing. Like he was a boy, and now he's a young man, and you can see that he's become more muscular, more powerful, and then. He's in his first opportunities to start, he did really well. So hopefully he can continue with that.
When moments like that come along, and a Revs 2 player steps up and makes an impact, do you sense is there a renewed sense of like energy and enthusiasm around Revs 2 when they come back the next week after seeing that moment?
For everybody, for the coaching staff, for our academy, for our second team, for all the coaches, for all the players, it's a huge injection. But if you look at also how the team celebrated when Tico scored, having those breakthrough moments, it injects life into a team. So it can be important moments when you have young players that can actually break in. So like I said, we can't get crazy about it. It's just one game, but we're excited because it shows that our investment in our youth, in our pro player pathway is beginning to work, and hopefully we can have more players coming through the system.
Yeah, and another player who is coming through the system right now is Noel Buck, another teenage player who's been getting some important minutes with Revolution 2, was signed to that first team contract, currently still getting important minutes with Revolution 2, but he's a player who Revs fans have heard a lot about over the course of the past few months. Where is Noel kind of in terms of that pathway for you right now?
So Noel is 17 years old. So he was actually playing his first pro season as a 15 and 16-year-old. So let's just start by thinking about that. So he's now a 17-year-old kid that has played 30 games as a pro. But quite frankly, he's a young 17-year-old. He just turned 17. Yeah. So he has, he has the pathway for him. So for Noel, it'll be a very similar situation. He's just got to continually get games, continually get confidence, listen to the coaching staff, both first team and second team, be able to juggle up and down, which is not an easy thing to do. And then when he gets his opportunity, hopefully he's ready to do the same thing. But it's, like I said, it's going to be timing. It'll be on him as well. He needs to be ready and sharp and showing the coaching staff that he's reliable and ready to go. But he's a very talented young man who has a very bright future, and there's no way to predict when it happens. So you just gotta create that environment, put the kid in the system, and then help him along. And that's what our job is. So we're trying to fine tune it, make it better each day. Very grateful to the resources that we've been able to utilize from our owners, and then from the support from our president, and then obviously with Bruce supporting as a sporting director, and we're pushing hard. We've put a lot of effort into it. My voice is a little scratchy because I was, we were all excited for Tico and for the pro pathway.
It's easy to forget how new this pathway is in the sense of how much it has grown over the course of the past few years, especially here in New England. You joined in June 2019, and at that point, you were basically building Revolution 2 from the ground up. I mean, we're still very, very early days in terms of Revolution 2 and kind of completing that entire pathway. But we've already sort of started to see some of the fruits of that labor. How have you felt just about the early returns, even though we are still in very early days of Revolution 2?
I mean, the honest truth is I had a lot of frustrations throughout this. It's basically been 2 years and 3 months since we've had this system in place. And there's moments where I was really excited and proud in the process, but there was a lot of moments of frustration because I wanted to be at a certain level, and we weren't. So we had to ramp up our academy and just really bring more professionalism there. And Rob Becerra in particular, he's somebody that I've worked with closely for 5 years at the Galaxy. So he knew exactly what I was looking for. So we spent a lot of time over the last year making that better, and you can start seeing the rewards there. Our players are getting pushed harder. They're training more. We're putting more resources into it. And so that from the bottom up, it's getting better. Clint and his staff has done an excellent job each day making the environment extremely competitive for Revs 2. So you start merging that, and then you keep adding better players to the system. All of a sudden, it starts to look pretty darn good. And I would say after 2 years and 3 months of really having a pro pathway system, I don't want to say that I'm 100% happy with it, but I'm really encouraged of where we are. And I get excited now because we have one, and it's legitimate. And now we just got to keep pushing the bar and keep pushing the first team so that they're good enough that they can get on the field, because that's the reality. They have to be good enough to get on the field. And so we're encouraged. We're never going to be complacent. We have to keep doing this and keep producing players year after year. And then all of a sudden you have a system in place that helps you be successful for a long period of time.
There's always this interesting conversation about kind of where winning and results fits in with a 2 team, right? Because the primary objective of the 2 team is to move players from the second team up to the first team. But this year we're starting to see those results as well. Revolution 2, at the time we're recording this podcast, the only unbeaten team in MLS Next Pro. So where does winning kind of fit in for you? Is there a correlation between the results this team is now getting on the field and the talent you've been able to bring in and the system you've been able to set up?
I believe you can do it all. I'm not worried about the winning part. If we're aggressive and play the way we should be playing, we're going to be exposed at times. And those, for me, are developmental moments for our young players, where you're attacking and you're putting numbers in the final third, but then you lose the ball, so you have to react and you have to defend. You have to be actively defending. All those things help you develop as a young player. So if we lose a game, I'm not worried about it, as long as our approach is right and we're playing the right way and we're setting our players individually to be successful, so that they can end up being on the first team, and then collectively we're doing it as well. So, but I do believe when you do it right, it can all be lined up. But there still has to be, you can't win all your games. Yep. There has to, if you look at a lot of studies and they say with player development, it's around 50%, because in those losing moments, it's huge for a player's development, because you make a mistake and you get punished, and all of a sudden your team loses. You think about it a lot more than in the occasion where that's not happening. So, but you can start seeing that we have a good group of players. The coaching staff has done a really good job with that, and then so the results are starting to come.
And in terms of the roster building with Revolution 2, I'm sure some fans have noticed the influx of Brazilian talent over the course of the past few months. Obviously, you'd brought in Maciel in the past, but then guys like Michel and Marcos Diaz and Rian Lima and Jose Italo. Is there anything, has that just been coincidence that a bunch of Brazilian players are coming in, or anything behind that?
No, I mean, it's funny because, Bruce and I had a conversation about a year and a half ago, and he said he drove through Framingham, Mass, and he couldn't believe the Brazilian influence in the Brazilian population. And there's a huge Brazilian population here in Boston. So I was also born in Brazil, so I have a kind of a liking for that part of the world, and obviously it's known for a place that has great players. So for us, we felt like it made real sense when we looked at our system and how we could enhance it. Robert Kraft always asks us every time we see him, how can we get an advantage? How can we be better? In this particular case, I felt like that's a way we can get an advantage, where we could look at our pro pathway, we can look at our academy, where can we enhance it with players that, could potentially make it better. So we've made a lot of trips down to Brazil, and in the process now have, 5 players in our system from Brazil. And then actually just signed another player that has been playing in Brazil but is Colombian. Because the ultimate goal is to produce players for the first team. Now, all of them aren't going to make it, but we do think it makes the environment better. Some of them will hit, and that's good for us. But I think it's a creative way that we've tried to get better.
And you mentioned Dylan Borrero, a 20-year-old Colombian winger who was playing his club soccer in Brazil. I know Revolution fans are really excited to get him into the mix and see what he can do. So just give us a little bit of background about scouting him. What we've heard is that this was a years-long process, really, to keep an eye on Dylan Borrero. And then what are you hoping he's going to be able to add to this group? Yeah,
so we have a scout down in that part of the world who's actually Argentinian, but he spends a lot of time in Brazil. So that's always been good. But we have, our director of scouting, Remy Roy, has done an incredible job helping us find and track all these players. And in the case of Dylan, it was just timing, where we've done a lot of homework in that part of the world, and he seemed like, for us, a very good replacement for Tejan, because we lost Tejan. But how everything goes, we have a process, and then ultimately it's up to Bruce. And I think just with this particular player, he could see it very quickly, and he usually does. Bruce has been doing this a long time, so as long as you present the right player to him at the right time, it's just, it works well. But again, he's 20 years old, and he's a young player too. I mean, he's only a year older than Tico, right? So we hope to be in a winning moment when he arrives and is able to play, which will hopefully be very soon, and we continue to win games so that we can ease him into it. But he's a player that's very good on the ball. He's got very good pace, and we look forward to incorporating him. And hopefully he can adapt, and hopefully that adaptation times quickly so he can have an impact right away.
I want to go back to Rob Becerra briefly as well, because you mentioned Rob earlier, and it's funny because in watching a few interviews with Revolution 2 players, with Academy players recently, some of them have been asked the question, who's made the biggest impact on you since joining the academy? Who has helped your development the most? And to a man, it feels like every single one of them has mentioned Rob Becerra by name. And I know you have a history with Rob. What is it about Rob? What is it that he has added to this academy in the short time, really, that he's been here?
Well, first of all, so he was, my assistant with Galaxy 2. So during that period of time, Galaxy 2, no team in the USL won more games, and we produced 11 players for the first team. So it was a very successful period of time. So he really got to understand what it looks like, and he's got relentless energy. So I think that the big thing that we talk about is just having it, the energy you bring every day. And if you can just get incrementally better every single day, all of a sudden you look back at 6 months, a year, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, look at the progress I've made. So he's brought enormous energy, but he knows what we're looking for. So we're very well aligned. And, at the end of the day, Rob is a very good director, but he's also a really good coach. And he's injected a whole lot of energy and just made things more competitive. But in a detailed way, with all the little things that you need to be doing as a player to be able to make it to the next level. So now, when he talks to Clint, and when we're speaking to Clint, and Clint has an idea of what players should be looking like for his team, all of a sudden now those qualities are coming out because we're implementing all those things in the academy. So it's 2 years of hard work. The last little more than a year with Rob has now enhanced it dramatically. So he's been excellent.
You can kind of get a sense for the personal touch that he adds to everything, even in the office.
Yeah.
When he comes in every morning, he's got that energy. He's walking around to everyone. He's dapping everybody up. He's got a comment for everybody. And I'd imagine when you're a young player and you feel like you're getting kind of that individual attention and you feel like someone cares about your development, that can be huge.
I mean, you said the word attention is, for me, in player development, is the key to it all. So, like, if you have a plant and you take care of it and you give it water and all the things, it's going to grow and it's going to look good, right? And it's probably going to look beautiful. It's no different with soccer players. You have to be hard on them. You got to, it's like parenting in the sense that there's times where you got to be really hard and really demanding, but you got to be nurturing. So it's striking that balance, and Rob does a good job of that. And we're starting to do a really good job of that with our Pro Pathway system.
It does feel that, along with that nurture, it does feel like there's a pause to celebrate the big moments when they come. And then when there is a big win, or we remember like the shootout wins, that there's a real emphasis on the players need to go and really enjoy those moments when they come along.
Listen, I mean, we're making a living in professional soccer, so you can't lose sight of that. And you need to have enthusiasm and you need to have fun. And so when you score a goal, you should celebrate. There's not a lot of goals scored, right? So we've definitely implemented that into our Pro Pathway system for sure.
And it's even down to the step below, like with the younger kids that are trying to get to the youth development teams. When they score in a practice, you guys need to go celebrate. It goes all the way through. It's awesome.
It is. It's the best part of the game.
Curt, one last topic before we let you go. I have to ask, because Alexi Lalas tweeted a graphic recently of the 1992 U.S. Olympic soccer team, which you were a part of.
Yes.
And I think, first of all, it was interesting for Revolution fans, I think, to look through that graphic because there were 8 different people who at some point, whether it was a player, a coach, front office staff, were involved with the Revolution. But I think immediately just below that, people were fascinated by the hairstyles of the 1992 U.S. Olympic soccer team.
The mullet is coming back.
So what is it? What is it we need to do here to get the mullet back? You're already on board.
Yeah.
We're watching we're watching the mullet grow out.
I feel
as
like
we
it's
speak.
coming back. I don't know. I feel like we're on the verge of it. I might actually start growing one.
I've got it. I've got the graphic pulled up right here. I feel like I need to get your opinion on who had the best hair, who had the worst hair. I mean, obviously we know you've got the mullet rocking, but we've got some really special hairstyles.
Well,
on the
I mean,
1992
listen,
team.
Alexi was the one that always was the most. He
was like known for his
stand out.
hair.
And actually,
Trailblazer, yeah.
if you go back to that, there's actually a video called "Kicking Balls" that we all made, and he was singing it.
Oh my God!
I could provide it for you if you want at some point.
Yes, we need that video.
So he always stood out because he's got the red hair and the goatee and everything else. But Mike Hewaller's mullet was definitely it was definitely the best one there. But we pretty much all had them. Casey Keller had one. I had one. Michael Appra. I mean, it was the mullet. You had you had the hair a
little
long
flow.
in
It
the
is.
back and sometimes a little short on top. So
It does feel like it's coming back, though. There's a few epic ones in MLS at the minute. It does feel like
There's
it's making its way
Sean
back.
Tolkien with
Oh, that's
Red
incredible.
Bulls.
That was
and
incredible,
They,
yeah.
and they say in the hockey world, there's a ton of mullets.
Oh,
The
if,
flow,
if,
the
yeah,
hockey
if you
flow.
got a helmet on in hockey and you don't have some flow coming out the bottom,
Yeah.
you're not a real hockey
You're
player.
doing it wrong, yeah.
That's the only reason I didn't go pro in hockey. The hair fell out, and I was
Right.
like, well, I guess
Everything
I'm not
else
gonna
was
be
in
able to go
place.
pro.
The
Had the
size.
last name, had everything.
Yeah, the size, yeah.
Yeah, had the size, the speed,
Quickness,
the skill.
yeah, power,
Yeah,
you had it
just
all.
didn't have the hair.
Yeah.
Just didn't have the hair.
Business up front, party in the back.
Yep.
Well, Curt, we really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us about the Revs player development pathway. We're looking forward to just continuing to see the next crop of talent come through. And yeah, thanks so much for being with us.
Yeah, me too. Thanks a lot for having me, guys.
Thanks, Curt.
We'll be back soon to wrap up the rest of the show. Welcome back once again to the Far Post Podcast, presented by ESports Gaming League. I think over the course of Major League Soccer's existence, we've seen there are lots of different ways to build a roster. Some that seem to have worked better than others over the years. That process has changed drastically over the years as well. But I think certainly based on the conversations we have with someone like Curt Onalfo, if you're not developing players through your own pathway at this point, if you don't have a robust academy system, if you don't have that complete pathway with a 2-team, there's going to come a point where in Major League Soccer, you're going to get left behind. And I think with Curt Onalfo, Rob Becerra, Chris Tierney, part of that system as well, Remy Roy, all involved in that process, it feels like the Revs are in pretty good hands in terms of the pro player pathway that's developing in New England.
Yeah, no doubt. And that was, when they were, when the regime change happened, for want of a better term, when Bruce was hired and brought Curt with him, and they talked immediately about wanting to build this network and build this platform. And yeah, MLS Next Pro, that piece is obviously newer.
Yeah.
But the concept of having this structure in place was crucial to them from the get go, and it's I think you hear flash and bangs about other academies of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 players that are in the first team roster and stuff like that, which I don't put a lot of stock in a lot of those stories. But you can start when you get visceral moments like we got on Saturday with a product who's made every step along the way of the pathway and is now knocking on the first team door. Right, It's a testament to the work they've done in a relatively short period of time, right? And we touched on some of the players with them that are right behind Tico or right there with him. It's exciting. It's great to see that sort of start to pay dividends already.
And one of the other roster building mechanisms, the Under-22 initiative, which I'm not going to pretend to know every detail about, other than
in true MLS fashion, it is extremely convoluted.
Other than the fact that basically it is a roster mechanism designed to allow teams to go out and spend a little bit more money to bring in some younger players who they think can come in and make an impact and develop, potentially later on be sold on to another league for a profit, because that's still, that is going to be an element of Major League Soccer for a long time, I think.
Yep.
And the Revs went out and made their first U22 initiative signing recently, bringing in Dylan Borrero, as we talked about with Curt Onalfo, a 20-year-old Colombian winger. And I think the last time we were on the show, we were talking about what the Revs had been missing through the early part of the season. And amongst other things, we talked about Tajon Buchanan, as Curt Onalfo mentioned, that it felt like the Revs were just missing a little bit of that spark in the attacking third. Someone who brought, a little bit of that swagger, a player who could take guys on 1v1, who was kind of, a natural speedster on the outside. And there have been no bones about it that Dylan Borrero is being brought in as a Tajon Buchanan replacement. And Bruce Arena referenced Tajon Buchanan so many times in talking about Borrero, down to the fact that he said the two actually look a little bit alike. I mean, there was no beating around the bush that this guy is supposed to come in and give the Revs what Tajon Buchanan gave them.
Yeah, and look, I think it's something that fans have always been clamoring for and have been sort of critical of the club. Well, you never went and replaced Tajon. It's like, well, it's not that easy to replace a player that's that good. B, we have a full complement of DP, so you got to go about a different way to do it, right? And this U22 initiative provided that opportunity to do it, and you don't just travel to Brazil and scout a player and a week and bring him back. It takes a little bit of time to get the right player. So, you always want him sooner than you can get him, but as we touched on a little bit earlier, it's still fairly early in the season for us. And they took the time to identify the player, scout the player. It's not easy to get those transactions over the line, even down to getting the contract signed, right? It takes time. But you hear the way Curt talks about him, Bruce talks about him. They're really high on this kid, and they're really excited about bringing him in here. And he will bring that. Yes, it's pace and stuff like that, but it's more to your swagger point, Jeff. I think is that he's not going to be afraid to go and take people on and create something for himself. And that sometimes games cry out for that, right? You can be playing really well, your system can be working. You just might need that something different to go and break people down. And it's not necessarily a weakness in the squad because not everybody has it, and not every roster has it across the league. But maybe Dwan is confident enough to go and try some tricks and take people on, right? Carlos is much more subtle in how he beats people. This is what we've been missing on the attacking end of the field, is this sort of little X factor of he may even not know what he's going to do with the ball next, right? That's that piece of magic that I'm certainly excited to see take the field.
Yeah, I know there's only so much you can take from a minute and a half long YouTube highlight package,
yeah,
right?
What do we know, right? But seriously, like we're signing Dylan Borrero. I'm like, well, I don't know what that is, but I know how people who do talk about him.
And at the same time, a couple of those moments in that YouTube highlight clip, there's kind of moments where you perk up a little bit. And you're like, oh, that looked pretty special. If you could do that, that'll be kind of fun. And the hope is that Dylan Borrero will be in New England soon. I do think, you always want to be cautious in these moments. I'll say, both Dylan Borrero, 20 years old, George Petrovic, 22 years old. Both of these players are, Borrero's leaving South America for the first time in his career. Petrovic is leaving Serbia for the first time in his career. These are young players making massive moves in their career, not just on the field, but off the field. So while this club certainly expects both of these players to come in and make big impacts, and I think make big impacts sooner rather than later. These both seem like the type of signings that you're not expecting it to be a years-long process. You're expecting these guys to come in and start making an impact with the first team pretty quickly, but there's going to be an adjustment process. You can't expect either of these guys to come in and be the finished product ready to go on day one based on the moves that they are making in their careers right now.
Yeah, for sure. And taking them individually, right, with George, right, and him, he gets a very soft landing spot. He can come in and sit behind the best keeper in the league for
great situation,
a month to 2 months, and get accustomed to the club and watch and learn and grow, right? And I think whereas we're all clamoring excited for Dylan to come in, we're also not like he has to start minute one and play every minute of every game. We're desperate, right? There's time here to work him in, get him embedded with the roster, get him comfortable with everybody, and take our time and get him ready. It's a marathon, this MLS season, right? And he'll be here, we're early May, and we're expecting him soon, right? We don't need to hurry this thing. We don't need to rush it.
Even Tejan himself took a good amount of time just to get settled, get in, and once he did,
and
history.
And to be fair, I think I have seen a couple people reference that Tejan himself, you have to remember, Tejan didn't come in and immediately set the league on fire
right away.
It took him a little while to kind of find himself.
Yep.
Not expecting either of those guys to be on the field this Saturday night when the Revs are home once again, hosting the Columbus Crew, 7:30 p.m. Saturday night at Gillette Stadium. And you've got like that tiny little bit of momentum right now, right? You've won back-to-back home games. It's been a difficult start to the season, and you've got a little bit of a spark right now, and it feels like a really important moment to build on that and go out on Saturday night, put together another solid performance, pick up another 3 points, because it does seem like in this league, maybe even more so than most leagues around the world, like that momentum can be very real. And it feels like there's an opportunity here to pick up a little bit of momentum ahead what's going to be a really difficult summer.
Yeah, momentum is definitely real. I think there's also a different level of opponent on this one too. And it's no disrespect to anyone we played yet, right? But this is a team where when you start to think about what teams are always there at the end, what are teams that are always going to be in the playoff mix, this is one of them. This is a player and a coach that's always around and it's always at the cutting edge. And it's this is a team you would have looked at and said, we need to match up with those. We need to take care of that game. And to your point, it's home. We're coming off a good result. We're getting healthier. We're getting stronger. This is a chance to really go and lay down a marker and say, we are still the team we were last year. We didn't go anywhere. We started a bit slow, but we're here.
And we'll keep an eye on Gustavo Bo's status throughout the course of the week. He was in training last week, obviously wasn't quite ready to be in the match day squad as he comes back from injury. But even so, I mean, this is a guy who hasn't played in a competitive match since mid-March. So you wouldn't imagine, as he comes back this week, if he's in the matchday squad, that he's going straight into the 11. Hopefully he's ready to be available on the bench. But with that said, I think it would be surprising to me if you, one, move away from that system that you used against Miami, and two, if you moved away from that 11. I'm not sure there's a change that you make if Gustavo Bo's not ready to come straight back into the starting 11, which I'd imagine he's not.
Yeah, I don't. You know, it's if there's ever a case of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. This is it. That's as comfortable and as composed as we've looked in a league game this year. There's no reason to do anything different. Even if Gustavo's raring to go, then let's take our time. Let's make sure he's ready. Not a bad weapon to have come off the bench if we need it.
Right.
So, yeah, I would be in favor of no changes, but that's why I'm sitting here talking nonsense to you, and I'm not sitting in the corner office back there.
Fair. Also, I've heard rumblings expecting another pretty solid crowd on Saturday night in Foxborough.
Yeah, it should be even a little bigger than we had last weekend. So, you know, it's always nice to get that big energy and buzz. It's sort of, you know, when you start the year and you get hit with snowstorms and weather, and it takes a lot of the wind out of the sails of, you know, the sales and marketing folks, right, that are sort of toiling every day to drive people to these games, right? So last Saturday was a nice sort of pickup for everybody to see what it can feel like when we get the sort of crowds back in the building that we had certainly been expecting and planning for all year. We'll be a little tick ahead of that again this Saturday, which is really exciting.
Well, very much looking forward to being in the building on Saturday night, feeling that energy again. For now, we'll step away. I think that'll do it for this week's show. It is, as we mentioned off the top, it's going to be a busy week next week with that midweek Open Cup game against FC Cincinnati. Absurd to think not only that it's the first Open Cup game since 2019, first time we've hosted an Open Cup game in 5 years, which I just doesn't feel real for some reason.
Doesn't feel right. No.
Yeah, it's been 2017.
When was the last time we hosted one at the stadium? When was that?
That was the semifinal in 2016, I think.
Was it?
Right against Chicago Fire.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, that's the only Open Cup game we have hosted at Gillette Stadium in my 15 seasons.
Yeah.
Was that semifinal in 2016. So yeah, great to get back to the Open Cup next week, the magic of the Open Cup.
Something weird's going to happen. I don't know what it is, but something weird's going to happen. Plague of locusts or something. I don't know.
So unlikely we'll have a podcast next week, but hey, I just throwing it out there. We might have some Twitter Spaces action ahead of the game. We're figuring that out. Keep an eye out for that potentially. I don't know.
Breaking news, Jeff? Is that what you're doing?
Depends on whether I feel like it or not. Yeah. Basically, it's like I wake up in the morning and I'm like, do I want to do this?
We do have to keep an eye on the Curt Onalfo mullet tracker.
That's true.
Because we do have to run the tape. He did commit to the mullet.
Measuring each and every day to see exactly how that growth is going.
Yes.
All right. Well, we'll be back with you in a couple of weeks to catch up on all that is happening here on the Far Post Podcast, presented by ESports Gaming League.